The Syracuse Orange run has unfortunately come to an end, and definitely a disappointing end as well. But I think first and foremost, it was definitely an unexpected run. This was a team for most of the season that really didn't look like a tournament team. They showed flashes at times, but up until they won those last two games against North Carolina and Clemson, they definitely did not look like a team that was going to reach the Sweet 16. So I think overall the sentiment needs to be that this was certainly a positive experience, and I think one that was enjoyed by fans, and like I said, just extremely unexpected. But unfortunately, it's over. The magic ran out. And when evaluating that Houston-Rutgers situation, and let me be totally clear, you want to earn it. You know, if you're Syracuse, and you certainly had to this point, you beat San Diego State, you beat West Virginia. If the Syracuse had won, they would have played 12-seeded Oregon State, but don't let that fool you. They've been on some type of run, one in which I've really never seen before, where they just kind of steamrolled through the Pac-12 tournament, and now they're doing the same thing in the NCAA tournament. And the Pac-12 has been such a story with March Madness, where there's 12 teams remaining, 4 of them Pac-12 teams. But Syracuse had a chance to play Rutgers, and unfortunately, Rutgers blew the game. And as it turns out, you kind of wish the Syracuse had played Rutgers, because Houston, it just wasn't going to happen. Houston is a very, very solid defensive team. I also couldn't help but think about the fact that Kelvin Sampson, and, you know, regardless of things that he's done in his career, you know, in terms of obviously losing his job, and, you know, he's, I guess, resurrected his coaching career, but he was the head coach at Oklahoma when Syracuse beat them in 2003 in the Elite Eight. And for some reason, that game, which I attended, was in upstate New York, or maybe not quite upstate, it was in Albany. But it was one of those things where Oklahoma was a 1 seed, and Syracuse basically had a home game. And it's really irrelevant to the actual game itself, but I'm sure in his mind, he definitely wanted some revenge against Syracuse, and he certainly got it tonight. And just from the beginning, you could tell that Syracuse was going to have a really tough time scoring points. And it started, Alan Griffin, I believe it was an air ball. Pretty sure it was an air ball to start off. And let's just get this out the way. This Alan Griffin-Syracuse relationship, not really sure what happens next season. Now, he already transferred from Illinois, so I don't know how exactly that works, but you have to think that he really wouldn't want to come back necessarily, and the feelings might be somewhat mutual. Just, it really has fizzled out in a major way, where he probably felt like he needed to force things, but he certainly wasn't playing well to begin with. And it's one of those things where, and Jim Boeheim's always been like this, where he sticks to the starters to start the game, of course, and to start the second half. Really doesn't matter how anything happened at the end of the half, he is going to go back to that same starting 5. So Griffin gets those minutes and some random ones here and there, but this is someone who has basically been playing like 10 to 15 minutes down the stretch. And so what his future holds, I'm not too sure. He has 1 more year of eligibility. Again, with the way that things went this year with COVID, and I don't know the exact rule as far as players gaining an extra year of eligibility. I'm not sure if that only applies to seniors. I think it might apply to everyone, but here nor there. Griffin, major disappointment. Totally. And at points this season, he was one of their best players. He's very good at certain things and very bad at other things. Very good shot when he's on from, you know, 3-point wise. He's great at the line. He can block shots with the best of them, but just really not a very good defensive player, and he can be a liability. But enough about him. It was a rough night for Buddy Boeheim, and you had to figure that eventually that was maybe going to happen. And unfortunately, it was just a really brutal night. So Syracuse went down 17-5, and they couldn't really get much of anything going. And I thought that a really good change that they made was Jesse Edwards coming in the game, I think, was actually probably the biggest bright spot, mainly on the defensive side of the ball. He really, Houston was kind of having their way with Dolezaj in the middle. And DeJon Jarreau, he was huge for Houston in this game. And Quentin Grimes hit some very timely threes. Didn't explode on the stat sheet, but hit some very key threes. But Jesse Edwards coming in was critical. And they were able to actually tie the game up at 20. So here you are thinking, they might get, run out of the building, but they chipped away. They did. And I felt like at that point, Kadari Richmond was in the game. That was a pretty good lineup at that point. And it felt like, okay, they settled in. We'll see what happens. And they actually had the ball a couple of times. And with the game tied at 20, they were never able to take that lead, unfortunately. Buddy Boeheim missed the jumper. Kadari Richmond missed the jumper. And then Quentin Grimes hits a three to put him up 23-20. And Houston would end up being up 30-20 at half. They'd be going a 10-0 run. And this was huge. It really was. So, like I said, Houston was up 17-5, so up 12. Syracuse makes this great push to tie the game, and then Houston's still up by 10 at half. So that was a bit of a gut punch. And to that point, Syracuse really was having a lot of trouble shooting the ball. And that, unfortunately, that trend continued all night long. At half, they were 1 for 10 from three, with that 1 3 being from Quincy Guerrier. Boeheim was 0 for 4 at the half from three. So you just knew that they were going to have trouble scoring, particularly field goals. They got to the line a decent amount, and Buddy was just very off tonight. He even missed a couple of free throws, and he ended up 1 for 9 from three. It felt like maybe at one point he was going to start to get going. He did hit a three somewhat early in the second half. They made a little bit of a push, and Houston actually made it at one point 39-27. I think Grimes had hit a three. I think he only had 4 threes, but they were pretty timely. But Syracuse was actually able to cut it to 4 at one point. Kadari Richmond, surprisingly, hit a three in the corner, cut it to 41-37, but Houston was just too much. That's really all there is to it. And Justin Gorham for Houston was key inside, getting some big offensive rebounds. And, Marcus Sasser getting some steals. He was active and better in this game than he was against Rutgers. So with Houston, they're not gonna, when you watch them, it's not a situation where it's like, wow, like, I think this team could really do some big things. But that defense is impressive. And this is a team that's been good in recent years. So it's easy to sleep on them coming from a lesser conference. Not a bad conference, but a lesser conference. But Syracuse just didn't have it tonight. And you knew that other players were going to have to step up, and it just did not happen. Marek Dolezaj, if this was his last game, which it probably, again, with the whole new rule about, having that extra year of eligibility, I assume this is it for Marek. Tough night to go out. I mean, he had 2 points, just didn't do a whole lot. Usually, he's getting, some assists, some rebounds, a little bit of everything, and just didn't happen. And Joe Girard, I thought, had a very frustrating game. He ended up with 12 points. He hit a couple of threes, but just didn't like his play this season. And I felt like he got a little bit too much run. Kadari Richmond, it's in totally different styles between Girard and Richmond, but I hope next year, hopefully Girard improves. And I think he came into the season a little out of shape and a little out of weight, a little overweight. He just seems slower, and he had really good driving ability last year. He regressed. I mean, there's just no question he was worse this season. No way around it. So, liked Richmond's game. Has a lot to work on, to be sure, but Girard just some key turnovers, some key misses. He had a couple of open three looks that could have cut the lead to 4, and wasn't able to hit it. And yeah, again, just even when he performs, it's tough. And again, this was someone who I liked a lot his freshman year. Hopefully he gets it back going. And then Quincy Guerrier, as time went on, and, there was some peaks and valleys, but really very good non-conference, very good early in-conference play, and had some very good games. Really, this is someone that has a lot of potential, but a rough end to the year for Quincy, I would say. And even in this game, he just needs to find that better touch at the rim. And free throw wise, he was really good at one point in the year, but really dipped. And it felt like he was splitting. And this is someone who gets to the line, him and Dolezaj, if I had to guess, probably get to the line more than anyone on this team. And unfortunately, Quincy was getting a little bit worse in that area. So, again, this is someone who I think could be really, really good, but has a lot to work on as well. And I just felt like there was just a lot of not smart turnovers tonight. Just really frustrating for Syracuse. And in a game in which I felt like they had a chance to win. Like going in, I felt fairly confident that they could play with Houston, especially after what I saw in that Houston-Rutgers game, but it just was not meant to be, and Houston totally deserved to win this game. No question about it. And like I said, Giroux, when you can have a guy like that in the middle of the zone that can do a little bit of everything, that is going to destroy Syracuse. When you can pop it out to Grimes, who can hit some threes. When you got Gorham down low, we're just not a big team. And we'll see what happens next year. We'll see. Again, Jesse Edwards, very encouraging game from him. And a couple, offensively, a little bit, an ill-advised shot. He traveled, but overall, I liked his game tonight. So it's a funny thing where liked his game against San Diego State, didn't like it against West Virginia, liked it tonight. Kind of just depends on the matchup. But that was a bright spot. But Buddy Boeheim, unfortunately, 1 for 9 from 3. What I was hoping for was that if he didn't go off, that he would at least still have a decent enough game. But by all accounts, just not a great game for Buddy. And, he gets a lot of attention, and no one else could really step up. And that was going to have to happen at some point. You knew that he wasn't going to stay at that level, but they weren't able to get the contributions. So it'll be interesting to see how things look, as we move into next season. But Syracuse ends up with 46 points tonight, the lowest point total that they've had in any NCAA tournament game in their history. So that's pretty significant. It is. And I felt like at times this year that offense, it kind of went a little bit dry. And that's unfortunately what happened tonight. It reared its ugly head. But I think a lot of interesting storylines heading into next season. And I think that this Syracuse team should be pretty solid. I do. And it's going to take some time for them to get back to that top 25 status. It's possible for them to get there, but there's things that they need to work on. Again, they need just size. I mean, at the center position, maybe they can get a transfer. We'll see. Could Sidibe come back? If he does, how healthy would he even be? That's an important position, especially with Dolezaj out. We'll see what if some of these young kids can progress. Can a Jock be a factor? Can Frank Anselm be something relevant next season? But look, the guard position, you got to like it overall. As much as I don't love Joe Girard for what he did this year, Buddy Boeheim's going to be a senior. You got another year of Kadari Richmond. And like I said, Quincy Guerrier, sky's the limit. He can improve. What happens with Griffin, we'll see. Robert Braswell will be in the mix. Rough night for Braswell tonight. Had a couple of open threes and just wasn't able to hit. Not a great night for Braswell. But I think that this is an improving team, and there's no reason to think that they shouldn't be better next season. Again, losing Dolezaj is going to be tough. No question. But I think just, Buddy, another year of him, and his confidence should increase with this great tournament run that he had. So we'll see. Again, disappointing finish, but overall, a very, like I said, unexpected run. Syracuse does it again as a double-digit seed. They squeak into the tournament and pull off a couple of upsets, and I think any fan would have signed up for that. I'll talk to you guys soon.